All right, good evening. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Town of Haymarket Planning Commission work session for Monday, April 19th to order. Roll call, please.
Weir.
Here.
Correll. Cottle.
Here.
Hallett.
Here.
Mason. Vianney.
Here.
Walker.
All right, has anybody heard from Ayush?
We have not, but I would like to make a statement for the Planning Commission. Ms. Jackie Walker has resigned her position due to work conflicts, so effective immediately, we do have an open space on the Planning Commission. We will accept applications. I'll mention this again in our regular meeting, and we will put out notice that we're accepting for a space open.
All right, so that was as of today.
That was as of, I believe she responded Friday.
Okay. All right, ma'am, you're up.
Thank you. So as I mentioned to you guys as you were kind of coming in and setting up, tonight we have with us Samantha Lewis. She is our planning assistant. She's been helping us do a lot of the research for the zoning text amendment. I'd like to start with her. She has a little kind of presentation to give you guys on some of the research she has done regarding some of the different areas that we discussed our last work session. So I'm going to turn it over to her. Again, I'll put the speaker over here, so you shouldn't need to undo your computer the way it's set up. Samantha, give me just 1 second.
Hello, everyone. I'm Samantha. I'm at UVA. I'm a first-year master's planning student, and I'll be finishing up here shortly, and I'm excited to join you all in Haymarket for the summer. I am presenting just a little bit of background today about short-term rentals, which is a discussion that I think the Planning Commission had a couple weeks ago. Some quick background. Short-term rentals are commonly referred to as that, or they are abbreviated STR. They're also called homestays, and Virginia's General Assembly approved all localities to set up their own short-term rental codes in 2017, so this is a fairly new thing for Virginia. Before it was just kind of a Wild West, and now we've regulated it. Each locality does different things. In Prince William, they do have regulations. Most of this has to do with taxes. Their zoning code defines taxation amounts. They have set up a certification process. They require a quarterly return for taxes, and require property owners keep certain records and provide them upon request. Loudoun has set up section 1470 in their code of ordinances to establish short-term residential rentals. This includes a no-fee registration, and they've also set up an initiative and a work plan in 2018 to evaluate public safety and additional measures to implement, such as allowing accessory dwelling units, maximum amount of days that a property can be available for rent, and other just kind of small things like no private parties. Currently in Haymarket, section 58-19.2 is a section called business, short-term rentals. It looks like this was set up a while ago, and it looks like it's meant to be for residential units. So that would need to be looked at and addressed in the future to possibly tighten up and clean up a little bit. Does anybody have any questions?
So one of the main, let me unmute myself 1 second. One of the main goals of us looking into the short-term rentals is because we are having some interest in doing this in the town, and also in our local area. It's become a little bit more popular, so we want to go ahead and get ahead of this and put it into our zoning ordinance the way it should be. There will be another kind of leg of this where we have to talk about the transient occupancy tax and how it applies. That's where I'll get with our treasurer, Roberto. We'll go over those items and have that data put into the ordinance as it's applicable, or just the town code sections. So Does anybody have questions in regards toward the rentals? Anything you wanna bring up about your HOAs? Areas this would be applicable? Anything? Nope, not yet. Okay. So thank you, Samantha, for doing that. We'll continue on, with the work session items, so the zoning text amendment, and as we come up with stuff, if you guys do have questions for Samantha, she will be on. She did some of the edits as well. So again, you have the link that was sent to that computer, and we are, get the right section. We have made it up to the industrial zone. And that's where we left off. So does anybody have any questions up to that point?
Said you loaded the link on here.
If you open the Gmail account on that computer, you
Right.
will find the link for it, yes.
There's a link for the Zoom meeting tonight. That's the Zoom meeting link.
Right, it should be the, top email. I just
the
sent
draft,
it like
this
right
one.
around 5:55-ish. So I sent you guys, an email about this on, I believe it was Wednesday. Just letting you know that this is our working document. You guys now all have the link. I will remind you as I do big updates to it. But what I do is I sit here as we go through our meeting and I take notes. We do some of the edits there, we flag stuff, and then I get with Samantha. She does some of our research. We put in our edits. So what I have done is everything that we had discussed and agreed on up to the industrial district, I have already accepted those changes. I have left several comments in here in case we need to come back to them, revisit. As for some of the more administrative or procedural kind of items, so that's articles, let's see, 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1 actually. All of those I will be going through with a fine tooth comb, fixing, changing items, just updating it for how we do things here, some housekeeping, if you will. But we did already go through a lot of the definitions, so when you have a chance, please check all of that out. Otherwise, tonight we will be starting on the industrial district, so that is Article 12. I'd like to work through Article 12, 13. We will be skipping 14 for the time being.
What's 14?
14 is the Old and Historic Haymarket District overlay. We can briefly discuss it. I was
Please.
hoping that the Architectural Review Board will take a big stab at this and really help provide the initial comments, and then the Planning Commission will review those at a later date. And then I would also like to at least start, if not get through, a majority of the sign ordinance, leaving essentially non-conforming use, landscaping, infrastructure, and use and design standards. My goal is to have a finalized draft of this by our June meeting so that we can review it and then hold a public hearing in July for this. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into the industrial zone. I'll start with you guys. Does anybody have any questions, comments, recommendations?
The only thing I've got is on the heights, eliminating the over 50.
Okay.
Wait, can you tell me page number, please?
So on the, should be right around 72.
Okay, 73, 74, okay. Limited Industrial District, Appendix,
Yes.
no, Articles, 7?
Article
I mean,
12.
12.
Section 58-12.1.
And the height regulations is 12.6. Strike the sentence, "For buildings over 50 feet in height, approval shall be obtained as a special use."
Leaving 50 feet.
I'd entertain reducing it. I'm not going to die on that hill, though. It's 45 in the B2, and that's the highest in town, so if you want to make it consistent with the B2 at 45, I'd be happy with that, too.
Real quick clerical kind of question. Are you guys okay if, as we work through this one, I just go ahead and delete as we're going and not track change? Okay. Say that again.
Actually, you're going to need a chart change because you're going to have to make a list. All right?
List for,
Publication purposes. Or at least record-keeping purposes.
yeah, we can do that. Anybody else have any suggested comments or edits? Any of the uses that need editing, additions, deletions?
What is the definition of a business support service?
Let me pull it back up from the record. Establishment or place of business engaged in the sale, rental, or repair of office equipment, supplies, and materials, or the provision of services used by office professional and service establishments. Typical uses include office equipment and supply firms, small business machinery repair shops, convenience printing and copying establishments, as well as temporary labor services.
All right, thanks.
Under the section where certain things are permitted based on special use permit, refuse collection, collection site, trash collection site, basically, is that something that we want to allow?
How does the commission feel?
To give us an idea, what area is currently zoned as such?
Let me pull up a map.
Okay.
It's essentially all of the area back there behind the old Food Lion, the McDonald's, back towards the railroad tracks, but I'll have a map in just a second.
Also the area behind the skating rink.
The area behind the skating rink. So if you look over here on this map, here it kind of comes up as a mustard yellow, but if you were to print this, it's like a bright yellow. So it's all of this area in here that is industrial. This one parcel here, it kind of reads the same color. It is not. It is light brown. That is the Foster's building. And then this one here, it's also a little misleading because it looks kind of similar up there. That is the old Cupcake Heaven building. Some people refer to it as the Bloom building. Has mathnasium, parandos. It's right there.
Why is advanced landscaping in the I-1? That used to be in the conservation.
It is. It's conservation still. Right here.
Oh, okay,
This-
that's the parking lot. Okay, I got it.
This is the
Okay,
storage parking lot.
okay.
What's the closest residential area to?
The closest residential area, so you have, there's apartments here at Winterham on the purple, so right in here. And then as you come down here in the white, that is residential zoning that backs up to this industrial area right here. So, you have St. Paul's Church is over here. And you have one residential property here. You have a big parcel here in the back, but that is part of the church. And then you have Carry to Full Terms property, and that's owned by the church as well.
So I understand it's based on special use permit, but the reason I indicated maybe taking that part out is because of smell, right? If a trash collection area. Loud usually involves smell, right?
Correct.
I have no problem taking it out.
It is defined as a facility for the collection of non-recyclable materials such as business and household refuse, garbage, organic materials, medical waste, trash, junk, toxic substances, or similar materials. So I think it could be very appropriate to remove. Oh, you should be here too. If you guys do want to strike it, I'm going to strike the definition as well. Is everybody in favor?
No objection.
So broadcasting communication tower and utility service, so that would be just Dominion would be the utility, and then broadcasting would just be like if Verizon wanted to add a tower in town.
They've got the existing one next to Century Stair.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
And so then other corporations can come in, so AT&T, Verizon, they can come in and they can rent space on the tower from the owner of it. So we do
Okay.
have that currently.
Okay.
The only other question I would have is why is a religious assembly under special use permit?
That is something we will be bringing back to you guys. We are looking into it as you requested at our last meeting, to determine if we should allow for religious assemblies by right in like the warehouse district areas. That is a very common practice of late in Prince William County and other jurisdictions because how much cheaper the rent is. They can get in to those larger places. So we are looking into that as well as what parking would go along with it, and we'll bring that back to you at the next meeting.
Right, well, parking would be determined by the square footage, right?
Yes, that is correct.
I mean, because right now, the way this is reading, entertainment establishment for adults is a by right use. I have a really hard time with that being a by right in a house of worship, having to have a special use permit. I think town's got its priorities wrong. And there's the only comments I have there. So that's gonna come back to us, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to remove anything else from this section? Or add anything?
I mean, do we really want entertainment establishment for adults when we bill ourselves as a walking town? Do we really want families walking by that?
I would think at least move it to a special use in that area, because if, just a hypothetical, this has not happened, but a hypothetical, if, Dr. Moon is moving dentist office, that space becomes open and available in that, shopping center there, a business like this could easily go in by right.
Do we even have a definition for that?
We do, it is very lengthy.
Where is it? Can't find it.
I'll tell you which.
I thought we took a bunch of that out a couple meetings ago.
Yeah, I thought we cleaned that up.
Yeah, in the definitions, didn't we take?
That might have been one of the ones we struck. Let me pull up the current.
Let me go back to my text version.
Because it came up like 3 or 4 different times in a.
So we did take out, we had the cabaret portion that we took out. It is, in our current zoning ordinance, it is defined as an adult cabaret, adult motion picture theater, adult video viewing or arcade booth, or adult bookstore, also referred to as a sexually oriented business.
Well, since we took out the definition, let's take out the use.
Okay, and I will verify that we don't have it anywhere else.
I haven't seen it anywhere else.
Everybody on board with that?
Mhm.
Okay. I do know further down in use and design standards, I think we have a lengthy section. We'll also retract that. Okay, if there's nothing else for the industrial area, we'll move forward for the conservation district. Any thoughts there?
We used to have residential as a special use, but since they redid the floodplains and we don't have any in there, I don't think that's a particularly good thing to put back in. Just given what's in that district. I don't see any place you could actually fit one.
For the rest of the commission is following along, the conservation district is this green area that runs the far side of the tracks along the creek and along our southernmost town boundary. There's one exception to the southern side of the tracks, and that is the storage lot to either side of this little pipe stem of a road. One use that we have back there that has been there for a very long time is a landscaping business. There's an old home here that is the office and main building. And then they do a little bit of landscaping, storage, and such to either side.
I think the only other structure in that entire C1 zone is that utility structure on Old Carolina.
Yes. Yep. Everything else is open.
Everything to the east of Old Carolina is owned by the HOA for Somerset. Everything to the west, with the exception of Advantage, a small parcel there, close to 15, is owned by either the UVA Foundation or Haymarket Landing as dedicated open space. And they're supposed to have a trail there, but I still haven't seen it.
I saw it today.
Okay.
Asphalt trail back in there. I think as it stands, these are okay uses. I think maybe the only one I guess maybe I would question, do we really want people to be able to construct buildings and such this close to the creek and back there? Or do we really want it an open, passive style of use?
I mean, who owns the property,
So as Bob was saying, over here, these two are owned by the Somerset Crossing HOA.
Okay.
So Somerset Crossing is up in this area. Then as you come over here,
Those are part of their open space calculation as well, so they can't be built on. They are encumbered. And that's encumbered by Haymarket Landing
right in.
and UVA Foundation.
So you kind of have this parcel here, which is already a landscaping business. So some of these by right uses are already accounted for here.
I don't, for what it's worth, I don't know we want to encourage a commercial outdoor sports and recreation field back there, because there's no way to access it, but, or even a garden center we've got there, so I don't want to make them non-conforming. If I were going to pull anything out, I'd pull the commercial outdoor sport and recreation, just because it doesn't appear that we've got room for it, or quite frankly, any viable land for it.
Okay.
But I can live with it staying in there as well. If somebody wanted to repurpose even repurposing the landscaping place would be problematic given the access issue, since that's a unsignalized, non-standard railroad crossing.
Anybody else?
I mean, it sounds like we are trying to limit development in that area, right? So if that's the case, why not just allow what currently exists there and nothing more?
I mean, quite frankly, I'd be willing to leave it down to, winnow it down to garden center, greenhouse, and utility service minor. And I don't think, at the end of the day, I don't think eliminating things are going to have any real implication, because, quite frankly, just not feasible. I mean, there's no objection. I'd even move that, leave it at garden center, greenhouse, and utility service and be done with it.
Okay. Is everybody on board?
It's fun.
Okay, so garden center, greenhouse, and utility service minor. Okay. We do not, just so everybody is aware, in the conservation district right now, we do not have any setbacks, anything like that spelled out. Is that of any interest that we want to go in and put coverage regulations, height regulations, setback and yard regulations, area regulations?
If we're going to keep greenhouse and garden center, we probably should. If you can just pop the ones from, what do you think, R1?
Yes. And then.
Because that would be the least coverage, right?
Yes, and then I think we would look further into, with the creek running through there, see if there's anything, any language that we need to pull over from like DEQ about
Floodplain?
floodplains.
Well, they're not gonna get a permit to build in the floodplain anyway.
Correct. But the greenhouse that's currently there sits just outside of the floodplain, so I think to best protect ourselves, we adapt very similar regulations from the R1 and put them on there, and then we'll look at the DEQ floodplain language.
Just wanna bring that back at a later date.
Okay. Okay, moving right on to Golden Historic District. Comments, thoughts, questions?
I've been charged with bringing forth the topic of shrinking the size of the historic district.
For the rest of the commission, real quick before you go any further, just so everybody is well aware, the red line that surrounds our town, everything within, so the entire town is currently in a historic district overlay. So every property that is in the town of Haymarket is subject to the historic district ARB standards. We do have some things that are of historic character, so just so we're all on the same page during this discussion. Please proceed.
If you could bring back the prior map and text change for consideration at a future date, that'd be appreciated.
When you say shrink the area, is there a specific area that we're looking at?
As I recall, it was the core area of the town, the frontage on Washington and Jefferson, and the gateways. In essence, eliminating the industrial section, the back of the industrial sections. I think we were leaving the purple area in, as I recall, taking out all the subdivisions and areas like Madison Court and Madison Street.
So,
Marchand's got a map somewhere. I thought I had that. I'm not going to look for it now, but
so, just so everybody's on the same page again, if you look at this map that's currently up there on the screen, the smaller red portion, so this is one of our signage maps, so when we look at different types of signage applications, we first start with, is it in the gateway sign area or in the core sign area? So the red is the core sign area, so the core of the historic district, and then gateway meaning the outer skirts when you first come in, it is the gateway to our town. So Bob, when you were talking about this, are you kind of referencing this red core area?
no, much bigger than that.
Much bigger than that? Okay. I'll get with Marchand if you said he has the map.
Like I say, it generally runs, as I recall, it's most of that gateway area and up there,
This area?
the entirety of the length of Washington Street, both frontages,
Okay.
the entirety of the length of Jefferson Street, both frontage sides. I want to say it went back a block maybe along Washington on all frontages. And then the gateway at Old Carolina on both ends of the county, or both intersections with the county line. Actually, no. At 66, we were going to stay. I thought we were going to stay at 66 and not cross 66 with the historic district. So there, down at Old Carolina in the C1, and then out at QBE, essentially taking out Alexander's Keep, the villages at Haymarket,
Long Street.
Long Street, Sherwood Forest,
Green Hill,
Green Hill.
Station.
Yeah, but Haymarket Station was going to be tricky because of the frontage of a couple of units. A couple of units might have to remain in it.
Okay.
And then,
Was the intent to leave Madison Court, Madison
No.
Street? Remove, okay.
the only neighborhood that remained in question, as I recall, is that one.
Neighborhood that didn't have an HOA.
That works for me too.
Okay, I will work on coming up with a map. I have one that doesn't have any color on it. It's just white parcels, and we will shade it in so we get a really good visual of what this would look like.
Okay.
We'll have that at the next meeting.
And the rest of the stuff, unless you've got some suggestions,
At this time for the,
I don't want to touch any of the rest of it.
yeah, for the old and historic section, I would like ARB to take a first stab at that and pass it back to Planning Commission. I think the only staff edits that we currently had was just if the HOAs were to completely stay in the historic district, to just work on a better process for some of these other more minor applications, such as a fence, to be an administrative approval, in the sense that the HOA has a certain set standard, the town has a certain set standard, and thus that would allow the resident a quicker process for applications of that style. The applications that would be wildly different, if somebody were to put a addition onto their home, that would still come to the ARB, but that was the only staff edit at the moment for that section. And that kind of falls more into a ARB guidelines. So we will,
So a question, in addition
Yes.
to maintaining some sort of look and feel, right, historic look and feel, when it comes to preservation, I think that's one of the intents of this, right? Is it preserving these old buildings and what have you? What's the...
yes, so it would be preserving the historic character and feel of the town, celebrating its history and kind of the roots of where we all kind of came from and how the town was developed. So you have a lot of frontages on Washington Street, and it was at the time that they came up with the overlay district. Bob, you and Mr. Cottle actually would know this very well. Disney was coming in, and so there was a big push to make sure that, they save the town's charm and historic buildings. And so that is a big reason of why.
How about when it comes to tearing down these old buildings and erecting these new structures? What considerations are we making?
In regards to how maybe blighted it is, or financially, is that what you're kind of asking?
And so if the intent is to preserve these historic buildings, when someone is proposing tearing down one of these old buildings and erecting something else, is there...
So I would say several times, we've definitely gotten applications in to tear down some of the old buildings. The board has weighed in. They've taken into consideration the story behind the building, what its historic character, what role it played in Haymarket. They've also done a good job, I think, in taking into consideration how blighted the building is. Financially, is it something that can be saved? And you can make your return back on that if you do pursue saving it. We have seen some really good saves. The old bank building plays a good part in the history of it. But a more maybe modern example in our times would be the Rafferty House. I refer to it as the Rafferty House because that's the previous owner, but one of those brick Little Ramblers that was there on Washington Street, and the winery came in and was able to adaptively reuse the structure. So the ARB to date has, I think, done a good job working on saving some of these buildings, but I think that'll come up for discussion in this section on which other ones remain.
I think one of the problems that you run into is, you know, when the ordinance was written, it deems that any building which is 50 years or older be designated a historic structure. And that's fine, or it was fine at the time, I guess. And, you know, I don't have any issue with that when you start talking about buildings from the early 1900s, 1800s, or something like that. But when you start talking about a brick Rambler built in 1963, quite frankly, I just don't see the historic value of something that if you want one, you can go over to Fairfax, dig one up, and put it on a trailer and drag it here. I don't think there's going to be a dearth of 60s era brick Ramblers in this country at any point in time, and I don't know that it particularly serves any purpose, especially if you start talking about some of the smaller ones. If somebody wants to build something nicer there, and still fall within the architectural guidelines.
At a minimum, we do need to address the 50-year or older, because in the next decade, we will see, if we leave the wording the way it is, all of Longstreet Commons would fall into the 50-year or older. So those being built in the 80s.
And in a not too distant future, then you'd have all of Green Hill Crossing being historic homes, and there's nothing historic about my house.
Okay, thanks.
But that's a topic for another day.
Okay, so are there any other questions real quick about that section? If not, we'll jump right into the signs. Okay. So for signage, we are going to be working on this a good bit. One of the upfront things that I wanted to bring up, and this might be a bit more of an ARB kind of question, based on whatever they determine, if the historic overlay district gets shrunk, how this will affect it. But the size of signage down at the industrial area in the B2, we have sometimes these franchise businesses that come in, they're used to a very defined kind of signage package. The ARB has worked with them to allow certain signage from their franchise packages to be put up. However, we are restrictive on our size. We are also restrictive on the height. I think that being a historic district, it is very reasonable, the requests that we have. But I did want to determine if the Planning Commission had any thoughts on this signage. That would be in the tables on page 85. '87, and they both 85 through 88 actually.
I know we haven't always been super consistent in that, because there's a lot of debate about the size of the Foster sign a year or two ago, and some of the smaller businesses over here in Winterham, I mean, it was disproportionate. So I think that whole signage thing needs a really good scrubbing.
Okay.
To put some historic perspective on this, and I'll do a mea culpa here. I stayed out of the sign ordinance drafting when the Planning Commission did it 10, 12 years ago. And I stayed out of it when the consultants did it a couple of years after that. There are a number of issues that we need to address, particularly off-site signs for those commercial properties without road frontage.
Yes.
Directional signs, not something that we need to address. But the one thing that bothers me more than anything else is section 5815.5 prohibited signs. And I would point to two in particular, inflatable signs and parasail signs. If they're prohibited, why do we have them? I mean, I think we need to make a decision. Either we're going to enforce this or we're not.
Yes.
Again, not a hill that I'm going to die on, but they're either prohibited or they're not. We need to enforce it.
I think we can also add on their abandoned sign structures. We do have this, off-premise signs. We have this. We have an issue with, we tell our businesses a lot, take your A-frame signs in at the end of every day, but we have a very big issue, especially down at the Foster's building, with these businesses will put it out and they just leave it out. The only time it ever gets moved is when the lawn care services come by and they have to move it to cut, and they don't always put it back up. So if the desire is to have a more strict, we go out and we write violation letters and we keep to it, that is certainly something that I can do. Or is it a way of business that we need to relook at the signs and how businesses advertise for themselves?
For my 2 cents, I'm not a big fan of the inflatable signs or the parasail signs. Not the A-frame signs I don't really care about a whole lot, as long as they take them in. But yeah, if we're gonna leave parasails and inflatables as prohibited signs, then we need to enforce it.
Okay. Does anybody else want to weigh in?
I just think we need to be careful for these businesses that they can effectively market. I think there has to be a balance. I mean, the businesses are a big contributor to the town, both in services and also revenue. And I really don't see the point of ticking them off. I mean, if we have an ordinance, we need to enforce it, but, I mean, I think the trick is to bring Haymarket into the 21st century with advertising, but not make it look like Vegas Strip with neon signs everywhere. I know we're really strict on signs, even in windows, as far as certain dimensions, the neon signs in windows, but something that's not lit, I mean, what's a rationale for not allowing it to stay out? I guess that's the question we need to think about.
I mean, I don't disagree with respect to the parasail or the inflatable. I'm just saying we need to make a decision one way or the other. Either they're prohibited or they're not. And although I don't personally care for them, I mean, I'm kind of agnostic on them at the end of the day. I just want some consistency into it. If we're going to have it in here as a prohibited sign, then they're prohibited. Otherwise, we just need to remove that prohibition.
I will work on some updates to the signage, probably also with the ARB, and we'll bring something back to you.
I would say over the last 7 years, that's been one of the biggest frustrations from business owners is signage, at least the ones who've spoken to me.
Correct, and I would say two larger businesses that are interested in coming to town. One has proceeded forward, but it comes down to or so they're telling us. It's coming down to how big of a sign can they put up. I don't think that we should, you know, always have to waver and do what every franchise wants to do, but I do think we should at least evaluate and make sure that we're all still on the same page, that this is the signage ordinance for us. So we'll take a look at it. We'll see. We'll do a comparison of some other historic districts and see what they have, what they allow. We'll take it to the ARB, and we'll get back with you guys on that. With that, since we are here at 6:52, we have a light agenda for our regular meeting. Do you guys want to take a brief 5-minute little break between our meetings and then come back to this?
Yes, ma'am.
Works
Yes.
for me.
Thank you.
Who's been bugging
Are we
me?
gonna go in recess, or are we gonna end
Let's
this?
let's adjourn this work
I think we
session.
need to do that and then
Yes,
open the
please.
regular meeting. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. We'll start at 7.
See why they're bothering me.
Samantha,